Up next, the Cannabis Reporter Radio Show with Snowden Bishop. After this message.
Evergreen's calling.
The practice of medicine through the phone, email, or online video chat is called telemedicine. According to the Wellness Council of America, over 70% of all ER, urgent care, and doctor's visits can be handled safely over the phone. HealthTerra provides personalized telehealth services, giving you access to U.S. board-certified physicians 24/7, anytime, anywhere. Doctor's visits at your convenience at healthterra.com.
And now, broadcasting on StarWorldWideNetworks.com, it's time for the Cannabis Reporter Radio Show with Snowden Bishop. Listen in as Snowden interviews cannabis industry pioneers, marijuana experts, policymakers, medical practitioners, patients, and other amazing individuals with compelling stories to share. It all happens right now. Here's the Cannabis Reporter, Snowden Bishop.
Hello and welcome back to the Cannabis Reporter Radio Show. I'm your host, Snowden Bishop, and very excited to be kicking off the start of a new year. Actually, January marks our first anniversary of officially launching the Cannabis Reporter, and since we began, nearly every single day we learn about a new miracle unfolding because someone has transitioned to medical marijuana. It's really hard to fathom why marijuana is still classified as a Schedule I controlled substance. But there it sits right alongside LSD, heroin, and meth, deemed by the DEA to have no redeeming medical value despite the mounting scientific evidence that it has numerous medical applications. Why is a good question. We can ponder the many conspiracy theories about politics and deliberate oppression by special interests like pharmaceuticals and alcohol, private prisons, petrochemicals, big agriculture, and the lumber industry. All of them have vested interests in the proliferation of the war on drugs. While some of those theories may have some concrete merit, the lesser-known truth is that ending prohibition is not simply a matter of breaking tradition with domestic political allies. Jobs are on the line, as is political capital. Unraveling failed policy also has far-reaching global implications. When the Controlled Substances Act became law, nearly every developed nation in the world was coerced into an international convention on drugs that mirrors U.S. policy. Rescheduling marijuana would amount to the most powerful country on earth exposing a great deception at worst or failed policy at best. It would also mean admitting we were wrong to have engaged the entire world in one of the most costly, deadly, and enduring wars of all time. So saving face isn't the only consideration. Conceding defeat means untangling international policies and rewriting drug treaties that have bound us since Nixon was in office. What I find ironic is that the DEA's power to enforce marijuana policy is dwindling. Higher courts and 29 states have taken matters into their own hands. Last year, the United Nations convened an International General Assembly session to discuss international drug enforcement policies and address the problems with the war on drugs. One by one, we're now seeing foreign countries abandon the U.S. Convention and move toward more sensible policy, often as a result of public demand for healthy alternatives to deadly pharmaceuticals. And that's the topic of today's show. Our guest today, I am very, very excited to have him on the line. His name is Dr. Stuart Titus, and he is actually one of the premier pioneers of this industry who's been involved in the growth of many companies in the cannabis industry. He started his relationship with Medical Marijuana Inc., becoming its seventh investor. He is truly a pioneer in terms of taking medical marijuana to other countries. Dr. Titus, thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be on today. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I was reading recently, you have been hugely successful dealing with other governments on a national level in those countries to enable patients to receive access to CBD. And I wondered if you could explain a little bit about that. Let's start with Mexico, because I thought that was very interesting.
Well, we've been very fortunate to have the wonderful opportunity afforded us within the country of Mexico. As of February 1st, 2016, Mexico has welcomed our products under a special exemption, which allows families who properly petition the government to receive this all-important medication for the treatment of refractory epilepsy. This is a type of epilepsy that seems to be resistant to typical pharmaceutical intervention. And we've had similar opportunity within Brazil going back to April of 2014. And we've had some very nice results with many families having their children seizure-free, or at least significantly reducing the number of seizure episodes, which of course adds to everyone's quality of life. And these families in Mexico were similarly seeing what was going on in Brazil, and then they wanted to petition their government to similarly allow access to our products within Mexico. We work with a good number of attorneys who represented the families, and these attorneys were kind of the intermediaries between the regulatory authority in Mexico, the COFEPRIS, as well as the families. And so through that, we were in contact with the attorneys. Basically, in Mexico, we had a separate challenge because there's so much controversy about marijuana and THC, the war on drugs, the cartels, the violence, etc. And basically what came back to us through these attorneys was that the regulatory authority, COFEPRIS, said, okay, we see what CBD, non-psychoactive from industrial hemp, can do for patients with epilepsy. We're all for this. However, you, Medical Marijuana Inc. and Hemp Meds, have to remove all the THC from your product in order to be able to bring it into Mexico. And our flagship product, the Hemp Meds, Real Scientific Hemp Oil, that we've developed many years ago, does have a trace amount of THC as well as a trace amount of other cannabinoids in this botanical formulation. And, of course, we believe this adds significantly to the entourage effect, as it's called, just the synergistic component of all your cannabinoids and all your other plant materials, your terpenoids, flavonoids, plant waxes, chlorophyll, etc., all acting synergistically together to produce this entourage effect. Anyway, we went to our laboratories and worked with our development team, and we wound up making a THC-free version of our Real Scientific Hemp Oil. We call it RSHOX. And this product, incidentally, this would be the first cannabis-based product to pass world anti-doping standards. So any professional sport Olympic athlete or any U.S. military personnel or truck driver, anyone who's regularly drug tested, could utilize this cannabis-based product, this being the first cannabis-based product to so qualify for this, and can use this product without fear of failing a drug test. Anyway, we did come up with this product about the end of the year 2015. It was tested significantly by the regulatory authorities in Mexico just to be sure it was fully THC free. And we did pass all tests, and our product was accepted and welcomed into Mexico as of February 1st, 2016.
Wow. You know, that's quite a feat, actually, because even hemp, industrial hemp, has traces of THC. So that must have been quite a scientific miracle from your perspective to be able to isolate it out that much and make it completely THC free.
Well, we certainly, have been working on this idea and concept for quite a while because, we just thought that, of course, there's certain controversies and, to be, appealing to, many conservative mothers here who, in the U.S., who are slowly we're educating the world, so to speak. But, of course, we have many, very conservative people in this country as well as liberals, and there are those that just don't want their children exposed to any type of THC. There are other professionals who would love to utilize our products, but they can't just because there is that trace amount of THC that just may be controversial or cause them to fail a drug test. So we have been working on this, but the fact that Mexico really came forth and challenged us back in the mid part of 2015 to develop this really accelerated our efforts, and we were very fortunate to be able to have done this, developed it, and brought it forward. I think we've had a number of firsts within the industry, and certainly it's been another great one to have the first cannabis-based product that actually would qualify for world anti-doping standards.
It's my understanding that during the UN General Assembly last year, Mexico was actually making some indication that they might be passing some kind of medical marijuana national legislation. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, Mexico has been debating this in several debates throughout the country at various sites. It's been quite something that the regulatory authorities there have really wanted to, particularly President Nieto has really wanted to have this national debate. Originally, he was opposed to any form of marijuana, cannabis, hemp, CBD, etc., just because of its controversial nature. But with some education and seeing some of the great benefit for many of the patients, and particularly a very close associate of ours, Raul Elizade of the Por Grace, Por Todos Foundation in Mexico. This was his daughter who had a terrible form of epilepsy. And
is that Emily Zoe?
Very, very well with treatment with CBD, and certainly her seizures have come down to very acceptable levels, and I think there's been a great story here. Not only Raul, but all his other families that have been in this particular foundation. And once President Nieto has seen this, he said, my gosh, I just have to totally change my opinion, and certainly has welcomed a national debate on this so that other politicians can move forward in a very similar manner. And I believe the Senate, the Mexico Senate, has overwhelmingly passed legislation favoring medical cannabis. It's now going over to the House of Representatives, and hopefully they can come up with a bill that President Nieto can sign sometime the first half of this year.
Yeah, and I understand that Emily Zoe is the daughter that you were referring to. Is that correct? She's the one with the Lennox.
Emily Zoe, yes, she's one of our patients who's been utilizing our RSHOX product and has some wonderful success. We've also had a nice informational study done by a Dr. Carlos Aguirre out of Mexico City. And I think our results compare very favorably with the pharmaceutical versions that are being tested here in the United States.
Right. So her case was very unique, and she also had tumors, I understand, that she was able to control with the CBD oil that she's taking. Is that right?
Well, there's certainly, yes, wonderful stories, anecdotal evidence, et cetera. So she's been a great one. We've had a nice one here in San Diego County in Ramona, young child Sadie Higuera, and her parents, her father Brian Higuera has been certainly on the news quite a lot with her amazing story with this genetic disorder called Schinzel-Gideon syndrome. And again, characterized by a significant number of seizures, tumors, et cetera, other developmental challenges. And certainly the child is doing remarkably well. She's just started special needs school last spring, and certainly we're thrilled to keep following these children's progress and seeing them start to develop in a more normal manner.
We actually did a story on Emily Zoe that was published in December, and I just was so touched by what that family has been through, and it just seems so incredible that you have taken the initiative to actually help them gain access in Mexico. And we also did a story on Sadie Higuera.
It's just a very, very heartwarming. We set out thinking we could potentially make a big difference in the world, and to be actually living that reality is quite empowering. And certainly it's nice to see that both these children had, challenges, not only the seizure disorders, but also, some type of degenerative condition, potentially having these tumors, which even Sadie on the local CBS News, the reporter said, was mentioning that the tumors had been reducing, and her doctors were quite amazed at the therapeutic application that this product has been able to provide. Certainly, we're very excited about future research to be able to further delineate exactly how and why this is working and what number of potential conditions this can fit into. But going back to the science, certainly when you look at the human body and the physiology, we discovered in the mid-1980s this tremendous internal endogenous cannabinoid system, and that we have a tremendous amount of receptor sites throughout our bodies for cannabinoids. Your CB1 receptor sites in the brain, your CB2 receptor sites in the internal organs, the viscera, the gut, if you will, which seems to help and regulate immune function. You have G protein coupled receptor sites, which Dr. Orrin Devinsky thinks that the action of CBD on these particular receptor sites seem to be the mechanism by which patients are overcoming their epileptic seizure disorders. There are vanilloid pain receptor sites, which believe that any kind of cannabinoid, particularly THC, is having a great effect on people's pain perception and the ability to manage pain effectively. So I really believe that science in the future, we certainly have a tremendous number of research opportunities, just given the huge magnitude of this endogenous cannabinoid system that we all have within us.
And that's another very important thing about, the eventual legalization of at least medical marijuana and rescheduling of any form of cannabis, so that research can be completely opened up, because it's been this chicken egg scenario where you can't do the research because of the scheduling, but you need the research to deschedule it.
I know. It's so crazy. I'm just ready to jump off a building. My gosh, it's just the whole thing and just the hypocrisy on it. Listen, these are absolute and vital nutrients necessary for the optimal functioning of the human body. And if you take away those nutrients from the human body, you're going to start to develop and you're going to start to have a decline in overall health, which, if you're a young child, okay, maybe, it's not going to affect you. But over time, certainly our aging process becomes accelerated if you do not have these necessary and vital nutrients. And all of a sudden, we have a lot of patients in our society today who we believe are severely cannabinoid deficient. And many of these patients develop some very difficult to treat conditions, things such as fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, irritable bowel syndrome, migraine headache. And this is all listed under this condition of clinical endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome.
Yeah, even Alzheimer's, there was a study done recently that they're starting to believe that cannabinoid deficiency might be partly responsible for that.
Well, I certainly think there are a huge number of these maladies that when patients become cannabinoid deficient, you certainly lose the ability to regulate homeostasis or the balance within the body. And this endogenous cannabinoid system is so far-reaching. It has implications into metabolism. We have a lot of overweight or obese people in this country, and we have a lot of diabetes as a result. And we believe cannabinoids have a tremendous place in this metabolic syndrome field. So I'm very excited about the future and future research here. I just have to believe that, our bodies do produce our own internal cannabinoids. And unfortunately, these internal cannabinoids are very quickly degraded by a fatty acid enzyme. But the body's supposed to accept and take in these plant-based cannabinoids to supplement. And the nice thing is that these plant-based cannabinoids seem to have a longer shelf life, if you will. They last quite a lot longer in the body and seem to have a wonderful therapeutic application.
Yeah, whereas the synthetics just don't seem to cut it.
Well, certainly, there are synthetic THC products available on the market. Your Marinol, Dronabinol, Sesamet, et cetera. And these have been around since the mid 1980s. FDA approved as Schedule 2 or Schedule 3. Patients can go in to a doctor's office, get prescriptions, and utilize these products. But patients, by and large, would prefer to pay out of pocket, go to their local dispensary, purchase their cannabis. And already we're seeing in these cannabis-friendly states a marked decrease in Medicare Part D spending because presumably patients are just going to the dispensary using medical cannabis to control their pain, inflammation, or other maladies in a way that pharmaceuticals, of course, you have these potential benefits, but you also have side effects and certain risks that you have to weigh and balance. Basically, with cannabis, here you got 114 times safer than alcohol profile. I mean, my gosh, it's just unbelievable that we're not doing this, and it's unbelievable we're not growing industrial hemp here in the U.S., and that's going to totally transform our economy and add percentage points and jobs back to our national GDP. It's just crazy we're not doing this.
It is, isn't it? I first became interested in cannabis by writing about hemp, and it was shocking to me that industrial hemp would even be scheduled. Just...
It's absolutely great. I just have never seen anything like it. It's just unfortunate that this has come about this way. But truly, to be able to plant hemp, and we have so much toxic agricultural land now. It's all been sprayed with chemicals and pesticides and herbicides, et cetera, and of course our artificial fertilizers and everything. And hemp really can help clean up some of these toxic agricultural soils. And certainly the hemp seed is tremendously nutritious too. So just that effect for people's overall health and wellness. You've got your essential fatty acids, which are basically brain food. You've got your essential amino acids, which build healthy bodies and healthy protein. And then you've got these immunoglobulins, these beneficial proteins you find in hemp that basically support the immune system. It's just amazing that it's so difficult to find these hemp products. They should be available everywhere. Again, the hemp seed, I believe, is the food of our natural human biological adaptation. Mm-hmm. Horses and cows, they just intrinsically know what food to eat. They eat pasture grass. And other animals have foods of their natural biological adaptation. And we humans are a little bit omnivores, or we eat a lot of different foods. But the one food that can sustain us throughout our lives would be actually the hemp seed, interestingly enough. Yeah.
And I imagine that eventually the common knowledge is going to push new regulation, and I really hope that is the case. But something was really interesting that actually published another article about this, answering the DEA's recent announcement, which sent off red flags to all sorts of pro-cannabis groups. And you had a very good explanation of what this is. And what I found really interesting, and I think most people don't realize, is that CBD is actually legal anywhere in this country pursuant to a high court ruling. Explain to us what it was that you explained in a recent video that you released.
Well, yes, and this is, again, something that we've spent a lot of time, energy, and effort in totally researching this. Basically, the federal court ruling you're referring to, Hemp Industries Association against the DEA, started back in the late 1990s. It was settled in, I believe it was February 2004. The Ninth District Circuit Court of Appeals basically ruled in favor of the Hemp Industries Association and thus allowed hemp food products to come into the country. And these hemp food products, hemp seed oil, hemp protein powder, all would contain trace amounts of cannabinoids, and particularly THC, and potentially enough where a military person could eat enough hemp seed or take enough hemp seed oil to where they might fail a drug test and get kicked out of the military. It's not that they were, smoking marijuana for a high effect, or they were going to be doing their job while they were, intoxicated or what have you. But it's just something that, hemp seed, as I mentioned, is extremely nutritious for us. And the Hemp Industries Association saw a tremendous market developing for these hemp food products. And the court ruling basically said that the DEA had way overstepped their bounds, and that there were certain parts of the plant that were exempt from the Controlled Substances Act. Now, of course, there are many, creative marijuana growers here in the U.S. who have seen the benefit of CBD, and now they're growing kind of a hybrid strain across with maybe a high concentration CBD, a little bit lower concentration THC, et cetera. And there are a number of different ways to extract your cannabinoids. And one of the easiest ways is from the flowering tops. But if one really looks at some of the research that's been done, particularly by the American Chemical Society, and they've done a lot of research actually on the flax plant. And it turns out that there are many other plants where you can find cannabinoids just besides the cannabis plant. But if the cannabis plant is grown properly, or if you can develop certain characteristics, you can actually find cannabinoids expressed throughout the plant, not only in the flowering tops, but also you can find cannabinoids in the leaves and the stems, the inner hurd and the stalk, et cetera, and all the way down to the root. So from here, basically, we've been able to grow a high concentration CBD within a hemp crop, and we've done so over in Europe, just where it's more legal for farmers to be able to not only grow hemp, because there are a tremendous number of industrial applications. Farmers in Canada can also grow hemp similarly, but in Canada, they're only allowed to take certain things off the farm. Basically, most of the stalk has to be left on the farm and plowed back into the soil, but farmers can extract and take the seeds and utilize that. And in Europe, basically, we have the farmers have a little bit more leeway to do things with the stalk of the plant, because basically most of the biomass is then converted into a biocomposite, either dashboards or door panels for Mercedes-Benz, BMW automobiles, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a tremendous number of uses, but also the stalk as well as the seed would have a high concentration of cannabinoids, and particularly that of CBD, and that's where we have contracted with farmers to grow our hemp. We do our extractions over in Europe and then bring that back here to the U.S. So what we're doing is kind of similar to what the hemp food industry is doing, and just you can buy in any health food store or Whole Foods around the country, hemp seed oil, hemp protein powder. Our products, just because of the way we process and extract, are similarly fitting into that particular category.
So someone in a state that has not passed any medical marijuana laws, for example, the Dakotas, they can actually go online and order a CBD product and not be breaking the law. Is that correct?
Yes, they could order from us. Now, there are other manufacturers and distributors here in the U.S. who actually grow marijuana or grow hemp here in the U.S. And technically here, the 2014 Farm Bill only allows for hemp to be grown for research purposes. Many state laws, of course, allow for certain cultivators to grow marijuana, and this is not supposed to be taken across state lines. Nonetheless, we have 16 U.S. states, I believe now, who have CBD-only laws on their books, so that parents can actually possess a high concentration CBD, which may also contain a significant amount of THC that would be maybe over the federal limit, which is trying to be imposed of a 0.3%. But this provides them the ability, these parents, to be able to stay at home and not have to move to Colorado or other recreational states, and be able to utilize a product that may potentially help their families and help their children.
Yeah, so the bottom line is that if you live in a state where it hasn't been legalized yet, you just have to be ultra careful where you order these things online to just be sure that the product was actually grown elsewhere and imported into the U.S. Is that basically correct?
So, yes, that's something that, I know there's a developing marketplace here, but again, the education is going to be so terribly important. Just the fact that our products, we believe, fit the letter of the law. If we ever had to, go to court and litigate over this, we feel very comfortable and confident in our arguments based on prior court rulings and prior court decisions.
Yeah. So what do you feel is going to happen nationally? What's your, I'm just going to take the temperature here and what you think, because you're really tapped into what is going on with the different regulations that we have. What do you feel that an end to the national prohibition is near?
I really do. I believe, we certainly have 29 states with the medical cannabis laws in the books, another 16 with 17 with CBD only laws. Certainly there's an unmistakable trend. A huge number of patients now, we mentioned switching from prescription drugs over to the cannabis side. You can see this with the Medicare Part D expenditures, et cetera. This is a tremendous trend. The American Pharmaceutical Association has been following this. I truly believe that very soon this prohibition, certainly if we're going to allow alcohol and tobacco in the country, my gosh, since this has got such a safe profile and just an unfortunate, terrible stigma attached to it, but we're slowly overcoming that. And of course, many families, mothers, seeing great benefit with their children. And it's just something that we're very excited about continuing forth with the research. We just think that, it's just an unmistakable, type of physiology. You have this tremendous internal endogenous cannabinoid system, and the way to supplement it is with plant-based cannabinoids. These are basically necessary vital nutrients. These are the foods of our natural biological adaptation. My gosh, to keep us from these essential nutrients is just such a terrible crime. I just can't stand it.
Yeah, it was fascinating to me as we've interviewed a number of doctors that in medical school, you just don't get information about the endocannabinoid system.
We find here in the U.S. that only 1 in 7 medical schools mentions this, much less teaches anything about it. Mm-hmm. So we're working to develop our medical education program, teaching about this endogenous cannabinoid system and all the great research that's out there. Certainly I'm going to have upcoming presentations, and certainly would be glad to provide some of this to viewers and listeners as it comes in. But I believe sometime by about the 1st of March, I should have a really up-to-date presentation on all the science and the research that's been going on. We're seeing some tremendous benefit. This G-coupled protein receptor site I was mentioning earlier seems to control about the functioning of about 800 of our internal genes, or about 4% of our human genome. And it's been very interesting to see that certain, genetically inherited disorders like CDKL5 epilepsy or FOXG1 epilepsy, again, just genetically inherited issues, or the Shinzel-Gideon syndrome. And we have other patients with other genetic disorders all of a sudden are overcoming these challenges. And what exactly is happening at the genetic level, I'm very excited to work with our local San Diego-based Illumina group. And of course, they do the human genomic sequencing, and to really see, in fact, if we're actually able to switch on, switch off, or have a beneficial effect right down at the genetic level with these products. So there's something pretty remarkable happening, and to be able to quantify it and then show it to the world that we've actually done some of the research, I think is something that's going to make a compelling argument in favor of legalizing cannabis.
Yeah, I know that you're also taking part in a book that I am going to be taking part in as well, as one of the editors and one of the authors on the human endocannabinoid system. And I actually listened to an interview recently, and it really is so cutting edge. The knowledge base that you have obviously is far and above what most medical professionals have in terms of really, truly understanding this system. And, as you're saying, the genome sequencing aspect of it is really fascinating too. And a lot of people have heard about the endocannabinoid system, but it's not common knowledge, the relationship that cannabinoids have with our human genes.
Well, it's certainly very interesting to even be thinking about this. But again, there are many people who have these terrible, genetically inherited challenges. And many of them, of course, are on medication and the rest all their lives to try to cope and deal with the particular situation. And many of these people have just come over to utilizing some form of cannabis or another just in their experimentation to try to feel better and overcome their challenges. And many of them have found tremendous success. We've had patient with a condition called Gilbert's syndrome. It's a liver disorder with generally patients that have very high elevated bilirubin levels, and this is just a product of abnormal liver metabolism. And getting on CBD products for over a year, all of a sudden her liver numbers are normal, her bilirubin numbers are well within the normal range, and all of a sudden she's been able to wean herself off of pharmaceutical medication along with working with her doctor because he's saying, well, gosh, you don't have this condition any longer. Pretty remarkable what's going on, and it really behooves us to go ahead and do some more formal clinical research as to some of the benefits.
I think that absolutely is key to any future legislation, any changes that we have on a federal level, because just about everybody that you ask who is in a policymaking position, if they're not fully aware of all of the amazing benefits of cannabis, their first response is, well, we just need more research.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the standard stock answer. It's just something that the world is begging for it. And, of course, to convince the medical community, there are many doctors now who do prescribe medical cannabis for their patients. And many, these doctors are well-respected physicians with very high-level positions. Dr. Don Abrams, chief of hematology and oncology at UC San Francisco Medical Center. All his post-chemotherapy patients, he says they've all got challenges. You got your nausea, vomiting, depression, you've got pain, you've got sleep issues, and their lack of appetite, etc. And he could prescribe, say, 6 different medications with all kind of differing side effects and interactions and the rest. Or he can just prescribe medical cannabis, and he does so, and many patients love him for that. I'm very impressed with some of the research that he's been able to put forth. Certainly a great couple of studies on neuropathic pain with cannabis, low-dose vaporized cannabis for neuropathic pain, etc. Just so impressed with the quality of you go to some of these medical symposiums and these doctors with brilliant research, and just to be able to learn from some of these doctors. I'm just very honored to be in that group that occasionally gets to attend these events, and certainly try to learn as much as I can about the up-and-coming science, because I believe the next 200 years, we may be able to replace as much as 40% of all pharmaceutical medications with cannabinoid-based medications.
That absolutely seems possible and likely, really. I mean, we've got so much anecdotal evidence, and it is really exciting to see more and more events coming. There's actually one coming up in April this year in Pittsburgh, which you may know about it, actually. In fact, you may even be there. You may be planning to go. It's being organized by Compassionate Certification Centers.
Oh, yes. I've heard of this, of course, and Pennsylvania being one of the recent states to legalize for medicinal use. It's nice to see that Pennsylvania, I believe, had 18 different indications for use. And if I'm not mistaken, Ohio, another recent state, had 21 different medical indications where patients could potentially get medical cannabis to treat these disorders. And I think that bodes very well for the future of research.
I do too. And Pennsylvania, especially, it's such a hotbed of academic research and clinical studies, and they have a lot of access there to great science. So I'm really excited to see what comes out of that. And our efforts too, just to really get out there and start educating not just patients and consumers, but also educating the medical community, because there really is such a lack of formal education on this topic. So it's very, very exciting.
Well, for sure, and to be able to have some of these wonderful symposiums here in the U.S. This wonderful group, Patients at a Time, has these annual symposiums now that I'm very excited to see them getting traction and momentum with things such as the American Cannabis Nurses Association, et cetera. Just all these great medical professionals are starting to come over, see the light. They're seeing results of what their patients are telling them, and certainly moving forward slowly but surely into this wonderful field. We certainly have two investment companies that we've been funding quite nicely, Axum Biotechnologies as well as Canna Life Sciences. Basically companies that we've helped finance and develop over the years, and certainly they're involved in pharmaceutical research to show the world the tremendous benefits of the medical side, medicinal side of cannabis. But certainly we feel that there are many instances where the natural botanical provides a tremendous, just health and wellness kind of a lifestyle. You take, a certain amount of vitamin C every day, and you should take a certain amount of plant-based cannabinoids every day, just for overall health and wellness purposes, and for a lifestyle type of supplement or what have you. We really think there's a great place for both the pharmaceutical side as well as the natural botanical.
Yeah. I actually, I've been drinking hemp shakes for a long time, but started actually taking CBD oil I had purchased for my father, who was having some health issues, which I've talked about on this show quite a bit. But I have to tell you, it has a very mind-clearing effect on me for some reason, and it's just straight hemp oil like yours. So,
yes, the hemp oil itself, tremendous brain food, if you will. There's some great benefit. Many of us, as I mentioned, are deficient not only in cannabinoids but also in essential fatty acids. I know we say fat, and everyone just kind of, turns their back a little bit, because it's something that when actually these essential fatty acids were developed or first researched and discovered, initially I believe they were called vitamin F. And if it was actually still called vitamin F today, we would be taking and ingesting and looking for these wonderful nutrients, because truly they're called essential because they have to necessarily come from our diets. And if you don't necessarily have these essential fatty acids in your diet, you're going to be deficient. And basically your brain's going to be starving for the food that it really craves, interestingly enough. So, yes, it's been tremendous taking these, not only cannabinoids, but also when you start to supplement with the hemp oil and the hemp seed oil in particular. I think you're doing the ultimate that you really can to maintain health and wellness of the human body. And I do it daily myself.
Yeah.
I have my hemp shake, hemp seed and hemp seed oil all mixed together, a little bit of CBD and the rest, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that so many people could absolutely benefit from it. So from a business perspective, just to shift gears a tiny bit, because you've been such a pioneer in the industry from a business perspective, in addition to all of the research and educating that you're doing, there have been quite a mixed review of investing in marijuana, like from an investor's standpoint. What are your feelings about the future of companies, and not just yours, but marijuana startup research development companies and stuff like that. Why is there so much trepidation in the financial sector about marijuana stocks? Do you know?
Well, certainly it's been great. Our company, actually, Medical Marijuana Incorporated, ticker symbol MJNA, we were the first publicly traded company in the United States in this particular space, industrial hemp, medical marijuana, et cetera. And, very interesting to see. I believe there are 230 companies since then who've followed us, and they're public in nature. Basically, a lot of these companies are very early stage, very much startups, but there's some very large companies actually investing in this space. For example, Scott's Miracle-Gro, New York Stock Exchange listed company, a tremendous $1 billion plus market capitalization. They're investing heavily in the space. Soil nutrients, grow lights, all these ancillary products and services that are legal, of course. And, when the time comes, if federal laws do change, certainly we believe that there are many other companies that are just kind of incubating and kind of biding time, so to speak. And once we have a change in banking regulations, once we have a change in some of the federal laws, et cetera, this truly could be the next great growth industry in the United States. I certainly saw it going back to 2009 when Medical Marijuana Inc. was first starting. I was the number 7 investor, and we've continued to invest in companies throughout. My business associates and I started a company called Canavest Corporation back in November of 2012. This grew at one point to as large as a $6.5 billion market capitalization. And we're certainly excited about the ability to start other public companies and move forward. I think our Axim Biotechnologies company, ticker symbol AXIM, has done fantastically well over the past few months since they've received additional funding for clinical study and development. We have others that we're keeping our eye on and moving forward. I think Canna Life Sciences, our other investment company that's hopefully soon going to be public, I think is going to be a very exciting and compelling story for investors. Certainly this biotech space, we've seen what's happened with GW Pharmaceuticals. Great story. They came to the public markets here in the U.S. 2014 at about $10 a share. Recently, I think yesterday, they closed around $124. So it's been a tremendous ride for investors over a very short period of time, certainly. But these other cannabis-based stocks, over the years, many sectors of the market come in favor and they go out of favor with investors. Our company, Medical Marijuana Inc., we were like most other cannabis stocks. A couple of years ago, we were very much in favor. Then we fell out of favor. Our stock, I think we trade as low as 3 cents going back earlier in the year of 2016. With the election and everything coming up in 2016, the November elections, things started to heat up about the 1st of October. A lot of little companies, there's one, OWC Pharmaceuticals, that you could have bought about the end of September 2016 for about half a penny a share. Today, I believe they're trading about 35 cents a share. So you'd make like 70 times your money in about 4 months.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty. It's amazing,
amazing.
and we've seen, with election results and all of that, the highs and lows. There's some normalization, I think, that happens. But just so people know, you actually have a background in investment banking.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I worked on Wall Street for 11 years. I was a bond trader with Credit Suisse, First Boston, trader and untrader.
Right. Wow.
Great career there.
Yeah, your career is impressive all around, I have to say. And, I need to start wrapping this up. I'm being told by our producer. But I really am so incredibly grateful that you were able to join me today. I've really been anxious to have a conversation with you because I think that you just have so much to share with our audiences, particularly. And, I hope that we can actually get together and do this again. sometime in the near future, because there will be other topics that come up that I know that you're one person who could actually answer them very, very well. So.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to certainly speak with you. You're obviously extremely knowledgeable on this particular subject, extremely passionate. We certainly share a lot of similar interests. I know I'm going to have some information up on our website, Medical Marijuana Incorporated, or medicalmarijuanainc.com is our website. Certainly will be up on YouTube with some of our educational materials that some of your listeners may have interest in checking out. Certainly appreciate the wonderful opportunity and can't wait to round up with you again.
Thank you so much. And for all of you listening, we will actually put information about your company and your bio and everything else on our website when you go on to thecannabisreporter.com and click on broadcasts. You can click on this episode, and you can read a little bit more about Dr. Stuart Titus and Medical Marijuana Inc. and all of the amazing things that they are doing, and also check out some of the stories that we've published about Medical Marijuana Inc. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Stuart Titus, for sharing your incredible knowledge with us today.
Great to be on the show, Snowden. I really appreciate the opportunity.
I'd also like to say a million thank yous to our producer, Ed, from Star Worldwide Networks, for making us shine. Thank you, thank you. And also, we are grateful for all of you listening. Please tune in next week, same time, same place, for another episode of the Cannabis Reporter Radio Show. I'm your host, Snowden Bishop. Please check us out at thecannabisreporter.com. Until we meet again, stay safe, stay informed, share what you've learned, and make it a great day.
Evergreen is calling.